night. I'm kicking it with my good buddy Ben, and it is his pick tonight. He has brought over a plethora of fucking movies, blowing my mind. Literally a stack of Blu-rays and DVDs. I'm psyched. Ben, tell my audience what you brought tonight.
Alright, everyone, today I brought Spring, Summer, Fall, Winter, and Spring. This is a movie by the director and writer Kim Ki-duk. Sorry if I butchered his name. But it's basically a Buddhist tale that revolves around, I guess you could say, the whole life of this one character. And although being a Buddhist tale, as a movie I've seen before, I know that it can be relatable to everyone. So that's why I wanted to show it to Tom.
So I gotta say that Ben here, he's brought this movie to my house twice now. That tells me an awful lot. I trust his judgment. You guys know this. I've said it a number of times during reviews with this guy over here. So I'm sure this movie is going to be amazing. I can't wait to check it out. Say that this movie here kind of blindsided me, personally speaking. I found Spring, Summer, Fall, Winter, and Spring to be a deeply affecting movie. One that kind of rocked me to my core, and yeah, I kind of poke fun at the title of the movie earlier in this review, but after watching the film and seeing where the narrative goes, it's completely necessary. And this movie is extremely powerful. The performances are bar none. I feel like the music is top notch, and the cinematography is almost unmatched by a lot of things that I see in cinema today. And this movie is very spiritual, you know? I mean, you go on an experience as a viewer with these characters. It affected me deeply, and I would imagine that you as an audience member would watch a movie such as this and take away from it what you will. I mean, in my opinion, I found this movie to be kind of a psychoanalysis of the main character, which happens to be, in my opinion, the little boy. But some people might view this movie as kind of a spiritual, journey, an experiment almost. So it depends on the individual. This is one of those films that's, handled in a deep and cerebral way, and you, the audience, take away from it what you will.
This movie, honestly, I kind of got it, it was a shot in the dark. I didn't know what to expect of it. All I knew it was a Buddhist tale, and as someone that lives here in Ohio, I don't know much about Buddhism. But I went into it as someone that loves Asian cinema, and I went in with an open mind. And as you said, it being told, the narrative being told through the seasons is necessary, and if anything, makes it more impactful. And for me, you could look at whatever the character does throughout the movie as something reprehensible or terrible, but for me, I feel like this is almost, it's a redemption movie. And for me, I feel like we all make mistakes, we all do things we regret, but it's more about cliche or corny, but this movie executes it in a way that is probably unseen to the American eye and truly impactful.
You know, I was comparing to the animal sequences in Italian, exploitation cinema, and whereas it's not anywhere as graphic as that might be, it didn't take away anything from it being hard to watch. You're seeing these animals be put through stress, and it's affecting.
In this movie, as you said, there's tons of scenes that are hard to watch, and you obviously don't condone any of them, but they almost feel necessary.
Right.
And it's, part of it goes to, there's probably things we've done in our life that we don't condone, we wouldn't want on the screen,
yeah.
But at the end of the day, if someone heard our story, it might impact them in the way that this impacts us.
It's another thing I want to talk about this movie is it doesn't hammer it home. You're not watching it for 2.5 hours, 3 hours. It's less than 2 hours, and I feel like the director gets everything locked into place by the final frame. And you come to some sort of spiritual conclusion yourself. So, depending upon where you, the audience, are spiritually and personally, will kind of, decipher what your opinion is on this movie.
I agree. I'm not a spiritual person by any stretch of the imagination, but this movie, it's a journey, it's a life journey, it's a whole experience, and no matter what background you're from, where you're from, I feel like you can relate to it. I mean, we all make mistakes. Most people regret the mistakes they make, and they want to make up for it, and this movie has a lot to do with that. And, it makes you think about your purpose in a deeper way, which I think everyone should do.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about the star count and the overall viewpoint of this movie. I was telling Ben, right after the film wrapped up, 10 out of 10. And after having a few moments to kind of collect myself from watching this movie, that opinion hasn't wavered. I think it's a 10 out of 10. It's rare. I'm no cinema snob, but it's rare when I give a movie a 10 out of 10. It has to do certain things to make me feel that way. You have to have an evoked emotion.
I have to agree. This movie, I've watched it, this has to be the third or fourth time, and I still stick with the 10 out of 10. The direction, it has some of the most beautiful shots you'll see.
Oh, yeah.
The acting, it doesn't let you down.
Superb.
The narrative is amazing. And honestly, to some degree, the movie, it is motivating, because you do think about life and what you've done, what you can do. And for me, that's important. As someone that's made mistakes, it's nice to see someone kind of work to change their own narrative.
Yeah.
I think we all have that capability, so I truly appreciate this movie.
Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack. Yum, yum. It's a meal in itself. Our all-meat super dog. Enjoy one now.
And welcome back. It's Tommy the Hammer. I got my dudes with me and Ben. It's Adam McDoogleez.
What's up, everybody?
And Johnny Rocket.
Yo.
Yes, sir. And once again, double feature night with Ben. It's our second movie. Benjamin, what did you bring for us to review tonight?
So today I brought with you guys Train to Busan. It's a 2016 zombie/disaster type of flick. And honestly, it's one of those, I guess, horror movies you could say that's strong on the dramatic element. It's very emotional. It impacted me, so I wanted to share it with everybody.
Yeah, we've definitely heard of this movie. It's prolific. What about you, Rocket? What do you think of the prospects of a zombie movie on a train?
Actually saw a trailer for this not too long ago, and it looked pretty intriguing. It looked like it's gonna be a good thrill ride. Yeah. I'm excited to see it.
We're all very psyched. Ben, thank you so much for bringing this flick.
Thank you.
What about to enjoy it in Blu-ray. In the meantime, you fuckers get that trailer. Peep that. When we get back, you're gonna know our opinion on Train to Busan.
Alright.
이상한 사람이 하나 타고 있는 것 같은데.
팀장님, 여기 11호차 응급 환자 발생했습니다.
너 꼼짝으로 착각했어? 알려주세요. 아직까지 남의 안에 열려있다니까. 우리 그냥 이것들 달고 부산으로 갑시다, 바로. 시티 몇 호칸? 터널 끝나면 들어가자. 지금 무슨 일이 벌어지고 있는지 알아? 우리 열차는 더 이상 부산으로 운행할 수가 없게 됐습니다.
Train to Busan. Yes, I did fall asleep. Towards the end.
We tried, folks. We tried to
I fell asleep towards the end of the movie, but before that, I thought this was kind of a tour de force in terms of intensity. I mean, it brought forward a lot of the things that I like in terms of zombie movies, namely the George Romero films. There was a certain level of tension with the main characters. The production value was top notch, and I was at the edge of my seat. I mean, I wasn't bored, but I've been drinking for a while. I've been drinking again for a while. It was inevitable when I was going to fall asleep. These fuckers were mopping the floor with me because I was falling asleep. I couldn't help it. Yeah.
Hey, couple shots of rum it'll do
Couple
that.
shots around. I
Need like 5 shots of rum.
I'm about to give you 5 shots of rum in the fucking kisser. It takes everything that you like about zombie films of the past, brings them up to contemporary times, and then offers up something new here or there to keep you interested. Now, I know in this day and age, a zombie movie is, it can be kind of cliched, a little bit boring, but this wasn't it. I mean, this movie, it kind of goes for the feels. It hits you right in the gut with the feels. And yeah, I missed the end of the film, but I feel like everything up until that point was top notch. It's a good movie. I like it. Adam, lay it on us. What'd you think about Train to Busan?
Yeah, Tom is right. I mean, there's been a plethora of zombie films made, but this one definitely stands out from the herd. I mean, it's got all the traditional hallmarks of a zombie film, but it does it in a way that is well done. The characters, you got involved with them, which is how it should be, and you went through the character developments that they go through, and an interesting historical note. During the Korean War, Busan was a port city on the far end of Korea, and that's where kind of when North Korea invaded at the outset of the Korean War, that's where they kind of all fled and took enclave at. It was kind of the Busan perimeter, which was sort of like their safety zone, and from there they were able to kind of strike back and push back the North Korean invasion over the 30th parallel, and that's why this film kind of has special significance with them trying to take this bullet train to Busan, which is sort of the safety zone.
So yeah, Train to Busan, as Tom and McDougleez touched on, it has all of your traditional zombie type of things going on, but at the same time, you truly care about the characters. I mean, every scene that involves one of the main characters, you're just like, please let them be okay, because you actually care about them.
And that's essential.
Yeah.
You need to have that in order to really get into a horror movie.
Right, and with horror movies nowadays, I mean, I love just mindless violence and blood and gore everywhere.
Who doesn't?
Whatever. The movie becomes so much more impactful, and I feel like this movie is kind of like the perfect mix of what a horror buff might want, what someone just coming into movies might want, and what someone that might watch a serious movie might want. It kind of hits all of those notes at the same time. So I love this movie.
And of course, that final scene, man, that just
heartstrings.
Yeah, that just did.
Dang. Actually, that's kind of funny you mentioned how you kind of get different movies within a movie here. Like, yeah, you have action, you have horror, you have a tragedy, you do get a happy ending anyway, but there's, I can see a lot of different people getting into this movie for a lot of different reasons. It really manages to really perfectly braid all these different stories together and keep the pacing on point, so you're never really dragging them. You're along. It's you know, it's fast, but it's not too fast. It's still cohesive. You know, especially building up at the beginning. It's got a nice, you know, slow, medium pace burn to it at the beginning before it's like, you know, when they finally, you're like kind of, you've been creeped out up until they get on the train, and then you see somebody take a dive, and you're like, wait a minute, what was that? And like, you know, they just, the pacing was just really, really on point for me with this. And overall, man, I thought this was a pretty fucking good movie, guys.
Let's do the star count, gentlemen. And, you know, considering I fell asleep a little bit through the film,
You just missed the really sad part.
yeah, to be honest though, like, you know, I mean, I saw a majority of the film, so for me, out of 10 stars, I think this is a solid 8. Google.
Yeah, I'm leaning in a solid, roughly 7.5, 8, like.
Are you wrestling with this one, dude? Are you wrestling this time?
He's wrestling.
But, between a 7.5 and an 8, within that range. I mean, this film had, like I said, it had a lot of emotion. It had a lot of, it was very earnest. I mean, it did what it did well. I mean, it was just, it's, like I said, there's a lot of zombie films made, but this one, it's noteworthy.
They kind of hit everything right at the right note. And so for that alone, I mean, I've watched this. This is probably my 4th or 5th time watching this.
Wowzers.
So this has a lot of rewatch value for me,
Oh, yeah.
and I feel like it's a movie that anyone can enjoy. So 8 or 9.
Last but not least, my dude, what you think?
Well, let me tell you something. No, for real. This was how to make a zombie movie for today the right way. Honestly, you have to involve great writing. You have to develop some characters that really draw the audience in. This movie did. It has to look good. This movie looked good. The soundtrack, I mean, when it really got to some of those parts towards the end, and the soundtrack, you're just like, like, really? Like, it's, I don't know, you see it coming, and it still hits you just as hard. Like, it's a really, incredible film. And sure, yeah, I was able to see some things coming here and there. Like, if you're going to, like, nitpick, oh, this is going to happen here. Yeah, like one of those. There are, a couple little twists here and there that keep it lively enough. So, overall, I'm going to give this an 8.5.
Yeah, fuck it. I'm going to give it an 8 too. So, there we
Whoa!
go.
Hey!
Motherfucker reviewing his review.
I know, yeah.
Still wrestling with that star.
That's Adam McDoogleez.
Just finish it off. Just finish it just like a zombie. Bam!
Right.
No, 8.5 stars for me. It was good. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Ben, for bringing this over. This is a great
Oh,
film.
yeah, man. Thank you, buddy.
No problem.
Alright, so, yeah, this is After Hours, per the usual.
After Hours.
After Hours.
With that neon trash crew.
Yes.
Season it up. It's 12:46 a.m.
Yeah, we're creeping on one. Yeah, Friday.
And several beers down the hatch.
That's right. That's the After Hours conversation. So we're going to talk a little bit about Train to Busan, off the record. I mean, let's just
Off
face
the
it.
record.
Well, I'll tell you what. On
the record.
Well, no, is it
So I shouldn't say that. That one girl was cute.
well, on wax or off wax?
Remember the stewardess on the train?
That had to fix her scar?
Yeah, the
She
first
was-
she was cute too. But it's like
South Korea bringing it with the pretty girls.
So,
Yeah.
are we talking about the fixer-upper scar?
Yes, yeah, that's the one.
Fixer-upper scar.
Yeah, the fixer-upper scarf was
All right.
the first one that got bit. And I think
Scarf.
the scarf was like a telltale sign that she was going to get like bit first because she got bit right in the neck. So therefore, there you go.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Oh, Adam McDoogleez.
Hanging up on those teeny bits.
Yeah. Adam loves teeny bits.
Whoa.
Whoa, yeah. Bada bing, bada boom. So, I mean, everybody knows that the zombie genre can be played out. It can be. Let's face it. Any genre can be played out. Slasher, Jaleo, werewolf,
Big
vampire.
zombies over and over and over and over and over.
It just happens. So
Yeah.
here's my question. Okay?
Shoot.
What's your favorite zombie movie from your youth? Rocket.
Oh man. Honestly, the first one I probably ever saw was the original Night of the Living Dead.
Wow.
And
George Romero's.
I mean, it was one of those because it's been public domain, so, so it's on TV and stuff. I can't remember how young. I was pretty young and watching this black and white movie and wondering like, what the fuck is going on? And why are these people eating the other people? Like, yeah, I remember being really weirded out by it. I don't know, Mom, why did you let me watch that shit? Seriously.
It just took you there, huh?
Yeah, that movie still holds up today. That's a classic. You know? I totally understand why it influenced a whole generation of filmmakers, including the one we just saw.
Yeah, and you know, when it comes down to Night of the Living Dead, I mean, like, watching it, I mean, there's like a weird Hitchcockian
It was
vibe.
very much in the style of Hitchcock. And
Yeah.
It was, you know, during the era of the
It's like, what the
60s and all that
fuck
stuff.
is exactly going on? There's people eating people, and there's like social commentary. I mean, Night of the Living Dead is absolutely one of the most classic zombie films, and probably one of the most expected ones, but there's nothing wrong with that per se. Ben, what about you, man? What was one of the best and one of the first, my
Well,
dude?
here's what I'll say. You know, I'm younger than everyone else. But one of the very first zombie movie that I ever got put onto was Night of the Living Dead by my dad. And you know, that kind of, it set the standard because it's a great movie. It has classic scenes.
I just want to say my mom didn't force me to watch that or anything. I was probably under Mom's watch there. I see when I can tune it on the TV. Oh, what the hell is this? Yeah. Mom, I got my wife's fine.
And you know, the fact that movie's a social commentary as well. It goes deeper than just people eating people. I feel like that's what makes it so powerful. But I guess to say something different, also as a young teenager, I got put on to Shaun of the Dead, which has many more comedic elements.
Yeah,
but I'll
does.
say when it is dramatic, it's good. And
Yeah.
there's plenty of scenes that still are just like, holy shit, this is awesome.
Yeah, Edgar Wright knocks that out.
That movie was a big deal when it came out. I remember seeing it and like, you know, it was like, you know, when it came out and it was just like, yeah, it
Such a great
went
blend
on
of
a kind of
comedy and
humorous angle,
horror.
and
Like,
it
it
was-
really is.
Yeah, it was a perfect blending of that.
Also draws you in, really develops characters that you care a lot about.
Yeah.
Like, spot on writing that one.
Oh, yeah. Great description, you know. Adam, what about you, man? What was the first effective zombie film that you saw that really grabbed you by the cojones?
Well, I mean, I will mention that. I mean, I will make it a trilogy in the sense that Night of the Living Dead is, of course, you know, the top class of zombie films, and it's still like my personal favorite zombie film. A close second, though, I will have to say, though, in terms of that, is Day of the Dead, which I think for like 80 zombies is probably the pinnacle of that particular genre and all that. So if both in terms of makeup and in terms of theme. And I'd also like to recommend two others for anybody who's sort of getting into the genre.
Bonus.
Hell yeah.
Boner.
I would recommend Peter Jackson's Dead Alive. I mean, it's pretty gruesome. I mean, it's kind of got some humor in there, but it's kind of sick humor. So
Oh, it's the best.
if you're into that sort of thing, definitely check it out. Also, maybe some Lucio Fulci, maybe like Zombie or Zombie 3 and all that. I mean, those just the Italian vibe of it and all that. Those movies are also kind of got their own thing going on.
Well, now, I mean, like, let's get down to brass tacks. With that one, let's talk a little bit about Italian zombie films because, oh my God, how prolific is that? I mean, Italian zombie movies.
It's a genre in and of itself.
Yeah, it's genre within itself. And you mentioned Zombie 3, and of course, Zombie 3 is an offshoot of Zombie, which is a unofficial sequel of sorts to Dawn of the Dead, which is a 70s movie. And, you know, Adam was good enough to mention Day of the Dead. I mean, that is an excellent 1980s effects-driven zombie film. That is one of the first zombie movies I saw that made me sick to my stomach. Men were ripped in half in that movie. But before I saw that
Greg
film,
Nicotero's first start.
oh yeah. Before, I mean, that man jumped to The Walking Dead, which, I mean, special effects wise, the guy's bar none still to this day. But Dawn of the Dead was one of the first movies I ever saw where a man stood near a helicopter and had the top of his head chopped off. It was one of the first movies I ever saw where a person's throat was ripped out. So the question goes, does gore make a zombie movie? Rocket.
I would say no, based on actually this movie alone, because there really wasn't a ton of gore in this. There was blood, and you got people biting and stuff, but there really wasn't like a lot of flesh ripping, skull shredding, you know, belly disemboweling. You know, there really wasn't a lot of that. I mean, it was...
I'm sorry, that's just all these analogies.
Well, I mean, a lot, especially a lot of the Italian zombies. There's a lot of gore. Yeah, there's a lot of prosthetic, guts and shit everywhere. So we got. It seemed like it was really tastefully used in this movie. You know, especially when guy gets kicked against the glass door and it leaves the splat of blood as he slides down, like. That little bit, I mean, whenever, the horde slaps up against the windows of the train on the outside, they're leaving streaks and stuff, like, there was just enough to be, like, gross and be horrible without drawing too much attention to itself, allowing you to keep progress.
So it was exploitative, but in a way where you understood it. You understood its purpose. Yeah. In other words.
Yes.
So in other words, gore is appreciated in zombie flicks. I mean, it's kind of par for the course in some ways. But like what John was saying, basically, if you do things effectively enough, I mean, it's appreciated, but it's not necessarily needed.
Quality over quantity here.
I feel like there's a deeper subtext to this conversation, to this intention, and like. Let's face it, with horror movies, gore is a subject that within itself has to be discussed. I mean, especially today. There's a lot of people that like talking about horror movies, and they're like, oh, it wasn't that gory, it was effective in fill in the blank sort of way. So I guess we've gotten to a point where horror movies and like what people judge based on horror is what the gore quantitate. Like the question is, does gore make a horror movie? And yes and no. Sometimes it depends upon the movie. And then with this movie, Train to Busan, I mean, I feel like John nails it. There's not a lot of gore to this film, but when the special effects are needed, it's necessary. This scope is necessary. I'm curious about Ben. I mean, you're younger than us. I mean, Rocket's old as fuck.
Fuck you.
Adam's older than me.
You're not that far behind.
I'm not exactly the baby of the room, but compared to these two old fart knockers.
Yeah, you're older than me by about freaking 2 months. Yeah, wow.
But the question is for Ben though. Like, I mean, you've seen CGI. We were talking earlier, like the concept of movie snob. You know what I'm saying? When does a movie snob become to the point, you know what I'm saying? Like when you're watching a movie and you see CGI and it's off-putting, when does that snobbery get in the way of a film? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I guess this is what I'll say is, and this goes to the last two questions, is for Train to Busan, I feel like, as stated, there's not that much gore, but the main focus isn't actually the gore, it's the characters. And what's horrifying is how they have to deal with it. You have a pregnant woman, with her husband and her soon-to-be child. You have a dad and his child. You have this guy with a disability. You have two old ladies. And it's like, this movie's terrifying because you're imagining yourself in their shoes in a zombie outbreak. And it's like, holy shit. You know, it's not even about what the zombies look like. It's like, who am I in that situation?
And the movie,
Because you follow that main character in, who seems to be the most able-bodied there. It's
Yeah.
like,
Right.
okay.
You really resonate with it.
Yeah.
And then in terms of CGI, I feel like in general, I typically have a preference towards non-CGI movies, but in the case of this movie, as everyone said, they don't use it too much, and when they do, you're like, it looks like the real actors. It looks real. They're not really faking me out with this. You know, this looks genuine. And
The question though is, like, I mean, is it important to have CGI look 100% real?
I don't think so, and I will go to another movie, another South Korean movie, The Host, which has terrible CGI. The CGI is not good,
No.
but it's another one of those movies, I guess another South Korean thriller, where you care about the characters, and it's the situation itself that matters, and then the actors and director executing. So as long as the CGI, you know, you can tell they didn't purposely make it terrible, it's still genuine intent, I feel like that's what matters.
That's a beautiful perspective, because the ultimate takeaway from a film such as this or The Host is the enjoyment factor, what you view, you know, with the film. I mean, plenty of people watch back in the day movies like Godzilla, you know, Rodan, all sorts of, like, you know, even the Universal monster movies with like The Invisible Man and like Creature from the Black Lagoon. These aren't movies that are known for sweeping special effects.
and there was the South Koreans in the 60s actually got into the whole giant monster act by this movie Young Gary and all that. So it's like,
I should have known this motherfucker would have the Korean trick up his sleeve. Motherfuck, dude, that's
there you
hilarious.
go.
That is
I'd love to
wonderful.
watch that at some point.
That is wonderfully put. And I think we're going to probably end on this note here. So I think all of us like Train to Busan. We all like zombie films. We all have different perspectives of when it comes down to these movies. And at the end of the day, we're all into it for a love of horror. That's what it all comes down to, is this love of what terror brings to us as the viewer. You know, you're not watching Night of the Living Dead because you're like, golly gee, I feel great watching this movie. You're watching it because it makes you feel, it makes you emote, it makes you react. And with the original Night of the Living Dead, there was the social commentary, there was the zombies, there was this multi-layered core. And I know I can appreciate that. I know Rocket can appreciate it. I know Ben, I know Adam can too. But, you know, for us, like, that is the core of horror. And with Train to Busan, I feel like they brought that back. It was lost in the mid-2000s, and, you know, this movie brings it to the surface.
And I will say the thing about the zombie genre in particular, I think why it has gotten as big as it has, is because it is so effective as sort of, you know, holding up a mirror to ourselves. And because the zombies are distorted versions of ourselves.